This is the first day of the March 90 7-day retreat in Springwater. Before I forget this, I did forget it last night, the chair that I'm sitting on right now is available during times of meeting. I usually just sit a few minutes on there before meetings start. So anyone who wishes to sit on this chair, please feel free to come to this place and use it. There are quite a number of people here who haven't been to this retreat before, to this kind of retreat. There are people who haven't been to retreat in a long time, and then there are people who go to retreat a lot. And for all of us, including myself, let us bring to mind, look into what it is that is listening to a talk or speaking. What is the quality of listening and speaking in a talk such like this? What is our relationship with each other as the one who's talking and the one who's listening? And in this connection, talk about the important topic of authority. Is one speaking from authority, or is one investing authority in the one who is talking? The process of it, the consequences of it. And then if there's time, get to some of the questions that have already been asked in meetings. When questions which come up in meetings are used in a talk, it's of course not to expose anyone. We're trying to keep a question anonymous, so it's not clear who has asked the question. The interesting thing is that questions which we often think are so personal, so individual to me, are also very personal and individual for everybody else. In other words, we share our concerns, our problems, our questions. Not just by the kind of sharing that we're talking about it and we all listen to it, but in looking, one finds it as my concern too, what I can look at, what I have suffered from. So, in listening to a talk such as this, what is the quality of listening? We listen to a lot of talks and speeches and lectures in all kind of contexts, educational or school, university, or political. Is what is being said here like a lecture, trying to transmit information about something that I know to you, to incorporate into your body of knowledge? This is how we usually listen. We want to get something out of the talk or the lecture that we can take home, know about, by having heard it and by remembering it. We're not talking critically about this or judgmentally, even though this is what the brain automatically does if something like this is considered. It may automatically consider it as something critical, something I shouldn't be doing, something that is wrong to do in contrast to something that is right to do. But we're not talking from such a duality. We're looking at, listening to a talk and questioning whether one is listening in order to acquire, to obtain, to become more knowledgeable, which is what we've been trained to do. We've been praised for it and rewarded with people's approval. People who are very important to us, parents and teachers, have praised and rewarded us for knowing things, for coming up with pieces of knowledge, of information that we have remembered. So there's a tremendously strong tendency to do that, a strong urge to do it, because we also have over the years become identified with our knowledge. That knowledge is not just added to the body of knowledge, but to the body of me. The more I know, the better I feel about myself, and the more impressive I am to other people, so I think, because some people are jealous of someone else who has knowledge. We do have that emotion too, feeling jealous if someone has more knowledge, and then competing to surpass that person in knowledge. In talking right now, is one just listening verbally, intellectually? Or can one also look or wonder, is this so? Does this really apply to me? Has this happened? Is this happening right now? What she's saying? Listening intellectually, verbally, but also wondering whether this is actually so. Not just accepting it because somebody sits there in front of a group with a microphone, maybe as it happens on an elevated, in a higher sitting position, which is solely happening because of a past knee injury, and I found this chair very comfortable. Not to elevate myself. And yet there's danger in speaking from a different level, because we automatically assume there must be something in something somebody says because it comes from a different level, physically, spatially. So one can immediately test it out. Am I attributing something to this person because of the position she's in? Attributing what? Authority? Being in this position, she must have something or else she wouldn't be there. And therefore, surreptitiously, unawares, taking over what is being said or protesting against it. But we can test it out. We don't need to protest. We can test out for ourselves. As we go, as we listen, as we sit, as we work, walk, are aware of each other. Is there this feeling of someone having authority, needing to get something from that person, wanting something from that person? And seeing that, if it is happening in our thought and feeling, some of the thoughts are not very clearly verbalized that are happening in us. But as one listens to the way one talks to oneself, monologues, dialogues, thinks and feels about oneself and another person, one can discover whether one is expecting something of that person, expecting to get something, and in that getting something to become something. And accepting something unquestionably, unquestioningly, because maybe it is too difficult, or it takes too much energy to look for oneself. It does take energy to look for oneself. It is much easier, less exerting, to take over what someone else says. And because that is so, we take over so much. Untested, unquestioned, and become followers in the process. And just as we said earlier, happens with pieces of information that we incorporate, or that the brain incorporates in the body of knowledge, and therefore the self-image swells or becomes more important to itself. So in following someone, it also connects somehow with the self-image. I have somebody to follow. One incorporates that person in one's self-image, one's teacher, just as an example, one's president. And the test of whether one has incorporated this person into one's self-existence image, self-feeling image, the test is whether one begins to defend when somebody is critical of that person, attacks him or her, then one defends, or is hurt. I am hurt because my teacher is attacked. I have to defend her because it's part of me, it's become part of me. One can observe this all so clearly and directly, inwardly in our own monologuing and dialoguing, and in our talking with each other. And the tremendous danger that besets all of us. One can observe it in watching newscasts over television or reading in newspapers. The tremendous following of leaders by human beings, taking it unquestionably or following out of fear. Fear of questioning something. Fear of the consequences of doubting and questioning. Of course, as has recently taken place in world history, a lot of leaders have been deposed. But is one free from the urge to follow by having deposed an old leader? Or is one looking for new authority? For a more trustworthy person to follow? Someone just called me up yesterday, asked, would I participate in a conference where the issue of leadership Spiritual leadership is going to be the prime topic. How are we to tell whether to trust a leader, a spiritual leader? It's an immense question. Can one trust anyone? What is trusting? Putting one's faith in that he or she will be reasonable, truthful, non-exploitative, not on a trip to incorporate students or followers into one's self-image, because that's what happens. It is offered to one on a platter, followers, to boost the self-image. Can one tell whether the leader that one is listening to, or I'm using this word leader because it was used in the telephone conversation yesterday, can one tell whether the person is on such a trip and one is contributing to that trip? How can one tell? A few times on the 7th day of retreat, we have read from a discussion that took place a few years ago between Krishnamurti and some 10 or 15 people who've been close to him. And the question that is discussed in great detail, it almost sounds repetitively, but it needs to be looked at again and again and again from many different angles. How can one tell? He's asking whether the speaker is coming out of the emptiness of truth or from the fullness of memory. Whether one is influenced by the personality, the reputation, the looks, the hearsay, and so forth, which we are influenced. And we do want to be in the ambience of powerful, important, reputable, famous, and so forth people, because it rubs off on us. It gives some material to the self-existence, to the image. Can one not believe that or accept it, but test it out, find it out? See it as it is happening, when it is happening. And then not engage in blame or fault-finding of oneself or the other, but allow this direct seeing to operate. Because only when something is directly, clearly, unequivocally seen can there be a change. It comes out of this seeing, not out of the me saying, I mustn't be like that. That's ridiculous. I must be different. I must not follow anybody. I must fight authority. And then join a movement to fight authority. Not that such movements haven't got their place in just observing what happened in many countries. Has its place to topple a ruthless dictator. But he's toppled, she's toppled, so where are we now? Are we free? Free to think and look for ourselves and to begin to understand ourselves, who have also been part of making the dictator a dictator. We're not unconnected from that process. Even though admittedly, power of police and guns, weapons, fortresses helps too to make a dictator or a despot or totalitarian leader what he or she is. but the people help too, because we want that someplace in our brain and body, some place to feel secure, to delegate authority, so we can safely follow, know what to do, what to think, and have someone else take care of our prosperity, security, defense, and so forth. To question all of that means the readiness to stand alone, not in protest, but in looking, in wondering, in seeing for oneself. And then whoever wishes to look too, we can look together. It's the amazing thing that happens, that it's not just oneself needing to find out and look, there are other people too. And through ways that are quite incomprehensible, we find each other to share this, to do this work together, and to watch mutually that we don't get on trips, tripping each other, as it were, making something out of the other for one's own sake, for one's own feeling of self-importance. No, it doesn't matter whether it's a so-called teacher or so-called students. We make things out of each other so easily, so inadvertently, if there's not looking and looking together and pointing things out to each other, both ways. Enormous amount of things have been pointed out to me by people in the course of doing this work for 10, 14 years. It works that way when the mind opens up and looks, because then it is not so identified with what it is and should be, and can look at information and use it, not just to store it, but to drop things, images about oneself, and work together in a relationship of friendship. Friendship which is on an equal level. So can that relationship come into being here as one person is talking and everyone else is listening? Not making this person into something, not making myself into something, making you into something, but just looking together in an atmosphere and a spirit of friendliness, not trying to find fault in each other, but to examine the whole fault-finding mechanism, which is such an ingrained one in all of us. The moment something is discovered, who did it? You did it, I did it, and then shame, guilt, regrets, rather than the clarity of looking, how does it happen? How is it possible that the brain can do such things? Create image of another and see the image rather than the real person. What is the real person? What am I without images? It becomes, if one really goes deeply with this question, persistent, it becomes scary. Because that's what I believe and have believed I am, is all the ideas of myself. We touched upon it last night. What I think somebody thinks of me, and what I want him or her to think of me is part of me. This collected structure of ideas and images and memories about me that is clung to as though it had a place in reality other than the reality of collected pictures and images stored in the brain, or goodness knows where it's stored. Now it's being said by someone that our memories are stored in fields. Well, that's all right. It doesn't matter where it's stored. But it is memory acting, and the attachment to that. Attachment because by thinking about it, how I am, how I have been, or what I will be, the energy is generated throughout this body. To observe that is a marvelous discovery. That the body and mind, which is not separate from the body, can be energized by the thought of myself, of what I am or will be. Or it can be deflated, depressed by the image that comes up about myself, or what I think somebody thinks of me. She thinks I'm no good, not as good as someone else. And the effect of such an image or idea on the whole body, can that be discovered and observed as it happens, from moment to moment? It's amazing to discover it, because up till this discovery, we have taken the energy or the gut feeling, call it what you will, of an energizing thought as proof of its reality, of its truth. After all, I feel very gutsy about this, or whatever. And it is just the power of thought to evoke energy. The thought of me is, I think, one of our most powerful energy generators. We've also believed that just because we feel energetic, we must be doing something right. I'm not saying we're doing something wrong, but can one detect whence the energy, where does it arise from? And notice that quick connection. I've thought of myself as having done something good, and immediately I feel good. Or I thought about myself having done something harmful, hurtful to someone else, and the impact on the whole organism called guilt or regret, shame. Am I talking too fast? People have told me it's very helpful when there are pauses. You don't just go on and on and on, but pause every once in a while. And if something is not clear, you don't feel it is like this, or you want to go over it again, or go into it freshly, that's a better way of putting it, because we can never quite go over the same thing. The words may be different. Then do bring it to a meeting. That's what meetings are for. Not totally. It can be for other things too. But this is one function they have, to clarify what was said in a talk, where something went too fast, or not clear, or not far enough, or you don't agree with it. Please don't ever feel that you're either wasting my time or hurting my feelings. Actually, when listening and looking at something, there don't seem to be any feelings involved. There's just looking and wondering. That takes place when one isn't identified with this thing one has just put out here, out in the open. It can be put out, but it doesn't have to be part of me. And then I don't have to defend it. And you don't have to be afraid of attacking it or questioning it. And so much energy is saved in pussyfooting around something. Will I hurt her? Will she take it wrong? She may not understand it right. But then one can say, no, you didn't hear that right. Let me say it again differently. And I'll listen. Someone said this morning, actually, a few people said it. That happens too. Things arise simultaneously in us. The more I do this work, I do become more present-minded. I'm more there. I see things very clearly, but it's very painful seeing what I see. There's greater sensitivity and therefore the pain of seeing suffering in oneself and others, particularly in others, one person said. Or the immediate criticalness I feel, I'm just all over the place. What of it? One person asked, sometimes I wonder, is it bliss for people who have never done this and just do all these so painful things obliviously, without awareness, and they don't seem to hurt, they just go on. Feel good about themselves. Because we said that yesterday, one must be careful in interpreting how other people feel. They may seem to feel all right about themselves and hurting themselves and other people, but maybe they feel nothing. It happens so much as we become indifferent in our obliviousness. The feeling is shut down. And when feeling shuts down, it usually shuts down pervasively, not just the one thing I don't want to feel, I'm not going to feel, but I want to feel other things that I would like to feel. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't seem to. So whether or not it is blissful, or one remembers maybe a more blissful state where one wasn't in touch with all the pain and sorrow in oneself and in this world. Usually once one has started looking and bringing to light, looking and listening deeply, one can't go back. It doesn't work that way. Maybe it does for some people, I don't know. But in doing the work, will one also be with the pain that arises from an increased sensitivity, vulnerability? See the incredible pain that we cause each other. So essentially through the way we think about each other, or have learned to think about each other. And the pain of not knowing it, of assigning blame to false causes, and then attacking these causes, and causing more pain. Is one willing and ready to live with pain when it arises? The pain of seeing what someone said. All my reactions are self-centered. I've watched them, I've followed them, I've paid attention. And they're all self-centered. Can that be met with as a discovery, or is it immediately reacted with, woe be me? What a horrible creature I'm discovering. I don't want to look any further. I want to put the sheet over it. Which is what we do and have learned to do from very, very tender age on. Not to feel overwhelming pain and rather deny or capsule off or misconstrue, contort our perception so as not to be in touch with overwhelming pain or what seems to be, particularly to a small child, overwhelming pain or fear. Because a small child cannot stand on her or his own, is utterly dependent on larger creatures to take care of him, her, it. But maybe unbeknownst to us, because we are still so much the little child, maybe unbeknownst to us, we can stand on our own 2 feet and look for ourselves and open up what was shut down and off for years and bear the pain, sit with it, walk with it, lie with it, without raising a finger to do something about it, against it, for it. Just the mere bare attention of what is there. Attention, not of something, just attention. What is there is there. It doesn't need to be made into an object. Do you see what I mean? When wondering and looking and insight has revealed some deep pain, guilt, whatever, can one leave off with one's old techniques of dealing with it? There's no technique to deal with it. There's only the pain at this moment, or the guilt. And maybe the question somewhere, what is this? If I don't bring all of my old, learned, conditioned attitudes and techniques to it. Being helpless again, as it were, but helpless in a new way. Understanding the futility of all of our techniquing, which is immediately, one can see, immediately a separation from what is, that can become so clear that technique, way to deal with it, is a step away, a distancing from what is life at this moment. And whether it's pain or depression or sorrow or guilt, I don't even know. I have to let it show itself for the first time without being hemmed in through words and memories. Let the words come up in the memories if they do, but the question remains, what is this thing? Right now, not what I experienced yesterday or 10 years or 20, 50, 60 years ago, but right now. And if that question is very strong, because one needs to find out, postpone or deny anymore, then it becomes naturally or intelligently clear that there's just that right now. Not someone standing separate from it, working up a technique toward it, or falling back, or instantly responding with reaction to it. That is thought. Thought creates that separate entity. Not to accept that, not to go with it, but to wonder about it, and then look within and find out for oneself. Sometimes people will say, what you're talking about sounds to me as though one should get more and more and more involved with this so insignificant little self. Doesn't one become more self-centered in the process? All occupied and preoccupied with this self. Does one? One has to look. Is that what is happening? Or in the listening and looking to what happens within and in our relationship with each other, is the mind also open to hear the wind in the trees, the airplane, the sounds of people moving? The crows and birds. The breathing that goes on all the time, no matter how excruciating the pain, there's breathing. The heartbeat, physical feelings in the body, maybe pain in the back or knee or arm or shoulder, pain in the heart maybe. Is that also there in this listening space? The thought that brought the pain, and the pain that issues thoughts, what can I do with it? How can I deal with it? Wondering what it is without thoughts, and also hearing the breathing, the wind. The wind inside, in and out, without making a thing out of any of it. Do you know what I mean? It's all happening as it happens. In such open, spacious listening, it may occur, the realization may occur that there is listening to everything and everyone in this, or that everything and everyone is listening. That there is, in fact, no separation. Between me and you, or me and the wind, when there's no thought about me, where is the separation? There may be pain or wind, breathing, someone moving next to me. Where's the separation? A question like this challenges thought, doesn't it? But it needn't. Because one can also answer, I don't know. Separation arises immediately. I compare myself or think I can't do it, somebody else can do it. But the amazing thing is such thoughts, comparative, she's better than I am, he can do it but I can't. Such thoughts in and of themselves can come into awareness as thoughts creating a feeling of separation. If there's this spacious listening which doesn't just cling to the content of the thoughts and takes them for real, other than thought, takes their content for real, that there's a separate me and a separate you, and comparing. If the process can be caught gently, immediately, and the feelings it engenders, then the thing can end right there, in the listening of past thoughts and present sounds, and the breathing, and maybe the pain, the beating of the heart, and new thoughts coming up. It's not bad. It's not good. Is it happening? That's the question. And what does it do? To a human being among human beings who all functions in the same way. Thoughts arousing feelings, feelings arousing emotions, emotion arousing thoughts, and in all of that, the thought, this is all happening to me. This is all happening to everyone, this process. Can it be detected here? Traced and seen precisely for what it is? That's the question. No one can do that for us. That's the beauty of it. We can work together. That's as far as it goes. But insight or understanding is not mine or yours. That just happens on its own. We will end here for today.